bullies thought they could embarrass the new teacher. Within a single minute, they were the ones asking for mercy. "Look who they sent to educate us," Tyler Morrison sneered, his voice loud enough to echo across room 301 at Lincoln High. "Bet she only got this job because of some special quota. Right, guys?" Laughter rippled through the classroom. It was Kesha Washington's very first day as a literature teacher. At 28, she stood before 16 students who watched her with the cold amusement of predators circling fresh prey. Tyler, heir to the biggest car dealership in town, leaned back with the smug grin of someone who had never faced real consequences. Beside him, Madison Pierce angled her phone to record a secret video, likely planning to post it later with a mocking caption about the school's diversity hire. "I doubt she's even qualified," muttered Jessica Kumar, the straight-A student who wielded her record like a weapon. "My dad says people like her could never make it here on merit." Kesha didn't flinch. Instead, she slowly turned, her calm gaze sweeping the room. It wasn't the look of someone insecure. It was the unsettling composure of a woman who had survived far greater storms. "Interesting theory," she said softly, her voice carrying weight. "Tyler Morrison, right? Son of the man the IRS investigated last year?" For the first time, Tyler's grin faltered. "And Madison Pierce," Kesha continued, strolling between the desks, "daughter of the councilwoman who voted against the free lunch program. I wonder what your followers would think if they knew that." Madison's phone trembled as she shoved it into her pocket. Kesha had grown up on Chicago's South Side, where survival meant reading people faster than they could read you. By 12, she could spot the difference between empty bravado and real danger. These privileged teens, they were nothing but amateurs. Back at the board, she tapped the chalk. "Now, let's talk about To Kill a Mockingbird. Who can tell me why Atticus Finch is seen as a hero?" For the first time in years, room 301 went dead silent. No one. "Not surprising," she muttered, opening her book. "Maybe it's because he defended an innocent man when it could have cost him everything." Tyler tried to recover. "It's just an old story about how people like you have always underestimated people like me," Kesha cut in, her smile sharp as glass. "And how arrogance has always been the downfall of those born believing they're untouchable." What they didn't realize was that Kesha wasn't just a teacher with a master's degree from Northwestern. She was a woman who had carefully documented every slight, every injustice, every smirk since the day she chose this career. And now she had the perfect stage to prove a theory about privilege, consequences, and unforgettable lessons. As the students shifted uneasily under her gaze, Kesha remained calm, like someone holding secrets too heavy to reveal just yet. If stories of justice and power moves fascinate you, hit subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Because sometimes, just 60 seconds of courage can flip the entire script. Over the next 3 days, Tyler and his friends tried to strike back. Madison created a private Instagram page, mocking Kesha with hidden photos. Jessica set traps in class, asking tricky questions meant to corner her. But each time, Kesha flipped their barbs into 20-minute masterclasses. "Excellent observation, Jessica," she would say, before dismantling their arguments with precision that left the entire room stunned. That brought the class directly to Toni Morrison's work on whiteness in American literature. Tyler realized his usual tactics weren't getting the reaction he wanted, so he decided to raise the stakes. During break, he uploaded an edited clip of Kesha to the school's TikTok account. The video spliced her lecture with flashy background music, making it seem like she was performing instead of teaching. Within 2 hours, it had nearly 900 views. What Tyler didn't realize was that every whisper, every post, every mocking comment was being quietly tracked by someone he would never suspect. Dr. Marcus Chun, a history teacher at Lincoln High for 15 years, had become a silent observer. An Asian American and the son of immigrants, Marcus knew these patterns all too well. He had once been the only non-white teacher on staff and had walked the same hallways under the same scrutiny. "They're underestimating you," he told Kesha over lunch, sliding a discreet folder across the table. "I've collected everything I could, posts, screenshots, overheard conversations. You'll want to see this." Inside were printouts of private chats, Instagram stories, and even WhatsApp messages between Tyler and Madison planning their next move. Kesha closed the folder slowly, a smile tugging at her lips, though her eyes stayed cold. "Marcus, you just gave me exactly what I needed." Meanwhile, Tyler was working behind the scenes. He'd convinced two influential parents to challenge Kesha's credibility at a meeting scheduled for Friday. His father, Richard Morrison, had already phoned the principal, hinting that maybe the school was pushing progress a little too fast. "She'll fold by the end of the week," Tyler told Madison confidently. "People like her always do." But on Thursday, the atmosphere in room 301 shifted. Kesha entered, carrying a small box, which she placed carefully on her desk. Throughout the lesson, her calm never wavered, but there was something new in her presence, a controlled intensity, like a predator finally deciding the game was over. "Class," she announced at the end, "tomorrow we'll have a special session on narrative consequences. We'll explore how characters who underestimate others often face surprising turns." Tyler, Madison, and Jessica exchanged smirks, thinking it was another attempt at sounding profound. But if they had looked closely during the break, they would have noticed the emails Kesha was sending, not to friends, but to the school's PR office, members of the board, local education reporters, and a social media account with over 50,000 followers dedicated to exposing bias in schools. Inside the box on her desk were neatly organized files, the evidence Marcus had given her, plus her own meticulous documentation. This wasn't just a teacher with a degree in literature. This was a woman who had survived by recording every slight and who now had the network and tools to turn evidence into action. Tyler would walk into class Friday morning thinking it was business as usual. He had no idea that underestimated people are often the most dangerous, especially when they stop defending and start striking back. Watching Tyler laugh with his friends as they left the room, Kesha felt something she hadn't in months, the sharp, almost sweet anticipation of a lesson about to be delivered, a lesson some students would never forget. Friday, 9:15 a.m. Tyler strolled into room 301 brimming with confidence, like a general marching toward victory. His mother, Catherine Morrison, was already seated in the front row alongside three other influential parents, all wealthy, all certain they were about to witness the downfall of the unfit teacher. "Good morning, class," Kesha said, her tone bright. "Today, we're going to have a very special lesson about stories and their consequences, and we're honored to have some guests here to learn with us." Tyler leaned toward Madison with a smug whisper. "She has no idea what's coming. My mom's about to end her." Kesha turned calmly, connected her laptop to the projector, and smiled. "Who can tell me what happens when a character completely underestimates someone in a story?" Kesha asked. "Silence," she smiled. "Let me show you a real-life example." The projector lit up. The first image appeared on the screen, a screenshot of the DEI disaster Instagram group. The room froze. Tyler Morrison, Madison Pierce, Jessica Kumar. "Do you recognize this?" Catherine Morrison, seated in the front row, straightened in her chair. "What exactly does this mean, young lady?" "It means," Kesha said calmly, "that your son created a private group designed to mock me and question my competence based purely on appearances." She clicked again. More screenshots filled the screen. Private chats where Tyler orchestrated plans against her, filled with cruel jokes and detailed schemes. Tyler's face drained of color. "How did you even get this?" "This is invasion of dash dash." "Interesting," Kesha interrupted. "Dr. Chun, would you explain to the class how this evidence was collected?" From the back of the room, Marcus Chun rose. Few had noticed him before. "Public stories. screenshots of posts that were visible to anyone at the school, conversations students voluntarily shared with me. The next slide hit like a hammer. A photo of Catherine Morrison smiling at a charity dinner beside a banner reading Lincoln High, committed to diversity, while secretly backing campaigns to push Kesha out. "How dare you?" Catherine started. "How dare I what?" Kesha shot back. "Expose who's really behind this?" Richard Morrison Automotive donated $50,000 to Councilman Hutchkins' campaign, a man who has publicly opposed inclusive hiring in schools. Click. Emails flashed on the screen. Richard Morrison pressuring the principal, suggesting the school was moving too fast. "That was a private conversation," Catherine shouted. "No," Kesha corrected, her voice steady. "That was a documented conspiracy." Then came the slide that shifted the entire room. The morning's newspaper headline: Morrison family investigated for tax evasion. A photo showed Richard Morrison being escorted by federal agents. Tyler trembled. This has nothing to do with you." "It has everything to do with me, Tyler," Kesha replied, her voice sharp. "Because when you and your family decided I didn't belong here, you forgot to ask whether you had the moral ground to judge me." The room was silent, every eye fixed on her. "You see," she continued, "a simple background check can reveal inconvenient truths. The FBI had already been watching your family's company. I simply made their job easier." Madison's eyes brimmed with tears. "You ruined his life." "I exposed the truth, Madison, just as I exposed yours." The next slide showed posts Madison had liked and shared over 2 years, each one drenched in bias and mockery. "And you, Jessica," Kesha said, clicking again. Messages appeared on screen where Jessica ridiculed classmates who needed financial aid, calling them freeloaders. Kesha's voice rose. "You thought you could break me because I'm young, because I'm different, because people like me are supposed to back down when it gets tough. But you forgot one thing." She stepped right in front of Tyler, who had sunk into his chair. "I grew up being underestimated, and I learned the best defense isn't to cry or beg for fairness. It's to gather proof and turn arrogance into its own downfall." "This is an ambush," Catherine Morrison shouted. "A setup." "No," Kesha said firmly. "It's education. I'm teaching your son about consequences, something he clearly never learned at home." Tyler exploded, his voice cracking. "You can't do this. My dad's going to sue you." "He's going to what, Tyler?" Kesha cut in coldly. "Explain to investigators how a company that claims losses year after year funds $1 million lifestyle." The final image appeared, a devastating compilation of posts, comments, and private messages from Tyler and his group spanning 2 years. It revealed a systematic pattern of targeting other students. "This evidence," Kesha announced, "has already been sent to the school board, the State Department of Education, and 3 journalists specializing in academic accountability, Tyler Morrison, Madison Pierce. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending investigation." The silence was absolute. Tyler buried his face in his hands, the weight of it finally crushing him. Madison sobbed openly. "Please," Tyler whispered hoarsely. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. I never wanted it to go this far." Kesha looked at Tyler for a long moment. "For the first time since we've known each other, I believe you're sincere," she said softly. "But sorry isn't enough to erase years of systematic cruelty." She turned to the entire class. "This is the difference between revenge and consequences. Revenge would be destroying someone just for the satisfaction of it. Consequences," she paused, "mean showing that actions have weight and that underestimating another person can be the most costly mistake of all." As Tyler Morrison sat crushed beneath the truth, he realized he had underestimated not just a teacher, but a force of nature who turned arrogance into its own trap. And one question lingered in the silent classroom. Are some lessons learned too late? Or can redemption exist even after every mask is stripped away? 6 months later, Kesha Washington sat beneath the studio lights of America's Wake Up, the nation's most watched morning show. Her book, Confronting Prejudice, a practical guide for educators, had become a bestseller. Her journey from rookie teacher to national figurehead for change had been as swift as it was unexpected. "Miss Washington," asked host Sarah Chun, "your method of documenting classroom bias has already been adopted in over 200 schools. How did the idea come to you?" Kesha touched the gold pin on her lapel, the emblem of her new role as Regional Director for Inclusive Education. "I grew up learning that the best defense against injustice isn't anger," she said. "It's preparation. When you document harmful behavior systematically, you're not seeking payback. You're creating opportunities for transformation." The screen behind her lit up with striking results. An 89% drop in reported bias incidents at Lincoln High, a 156% increase in minority enrollment in advanced courses, 0 discrimination complaints in the last semester, and 34 other schools already adopting the Washington Protocol. Even more impressive, a 30-minute documentary about Lincoln High's transformation had just been nominated for an Emmy. Inside the school itself, change was visible everywhere. Students once silent now led anti-bullying committees, hosted diversity seminars, and mentored younger peers. Tyler Morrison, however, was facing a different reality. His expulsion had become permanent. 6 private schools rejected his applications after reviewing his digital history. At his 7th attempt, a small community school 2 hours away, he asked the counselor, "Will this follow me forever?" Mrs. Patterson, a 50-year-old counselor who knew his case well, replied gently, "Documented patterns don't disappear, Tyler, but growth can still exist alongside consequences. The question is, do you really want to change or just make the consequences vanish?" Richard Morrison had lost not just his company but his freedom, sentenced to 2 years in federal prison for tax fraud. The investigation Kesha had fueled exposed a decade of corruption involving other businessmen and city officials. The entire community was shaken. Catherine Morrison was forced to sell their $3 million mansion to cover legal fees and restitution. Ironically, she now lived 3 blocks from the modest home where Kesha herself had grown up. The community noted the symbolism. Madison Pierce's influencer dreams collapsed overnight. Brands refused to touch her name, and her motivational posts were met with brutal reminders of her past. She deleted her social media accounts and now folded shirts at a small clothing store, discovering for the first time the value of honest work. Jessica Kumar lost her full Stanford scholarship after her history of derogatory comments came to light. Today, she studies at a community college while shelving books in a library, serving the very students she once mocked. But perhaps the greatest transformation was at Lincoln High itself. Dr. Marcus Chun watched with quiet pride as Room 301 became a true laboratory of empathy and change. Students who had once been invisible now led the way. Elena Rodriguez, the timid girl who had never dared to raise her hand, was now running a mentoring program for newly arrived immigrant students. David Kim, once the target of cruel jokes, launched a debate club where students discussed complex social issues with a maturity that stunned even veteran teachers. At a meeting of the new Student Diversity Council, Elena Rodriguez raised her hand. "Miss Washington, we want to expand our awareness program to the neighboring elementary school. Anti-bias education should start early." Kesha nodded, her eyes shining as she watched 16 and 17-year-olds create projects with the wisdom of seasoned organizers. Room 301 had become something new, a space where vulnerability was strength, differences were celebrated as assets, and students discovered that true power comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. The ripple effect spread far beyond Lincoln High. The Morrison case became a national case study on how documenting bias can create lasting change. 3 universities added it to their education curricula. 2 states passed legislation requiring evidence-based diversity training for all teachers. During a break at the National Conference for Progressive Educators, Kesha's phone buzzed with a message on LinkedIn. It was from Tyler Morrison. "Miss Washington, I don't deserve your attention, but I've been in therapy for 4 months and volunteering at a community center that serves immigrant families. It took me 2 years to understand. You weren't punishing me. You were showing me the kind of person I had chosen to be, and the kind of person I could still become. Your lessons were painful, but necessary. Thank you." Kesha read it twice before replying, "Tyler, real growth starts with full accountability. Keep working on yourself. Not for me, but for all the people you'll meet in life." It wasn't forgiveness. Some actions carried permanent consequences, but it was proof that even the worst behavior could spark genuine reflection when faced with real accountability. Later, standing by the window of her new office at the National Foundation for Inclusive Education, Kesha looked out at a city where students of all backgrounds now studied in more equitable schools, where teachers had real tools to combat bias, where documenting injustice was no longer optional but standard protocol. "The best revenge," she murmured, echoing words she had spoken in countless interviews, "is never destruction. It's building something so transformative that it rewrites the rules of the game for an entire generation." Her phone vibrated again, this time with an invitation to testify before Congress about federal anti-bullying legislation inspired directly by the protocol she had created. Kesha Washington, once a young teacher underestimated by her own students, had turned humiliation into policy, personal pain into systemic reform, and one classroom battle into a national movement. And Tyler Morrison? He finally learned that some lessons are too expensive to ignore, but too valuable to waste. Because real victory isn't just surviving prejudice, it's making sure the next generation never has to. So I'll ask you, have you ever turned a personal injustice into positive change for others? Drop your story in the comments and subscribe for more powerful true-to-life tales proving that the best revenge is success so undeniable. It transforms the world itself.